The desire for peace, prosperity, happiness. These are all natural wants. The desire for good, however, can be exploited and used by those who do evil. Communism advertises itself as a promise for a man-made heaven on earth. What it delivered instead was a living hell. Harvard University presses The Black Book of Communism, published in 1994, attributes over 100 million deaths worldwide to the ideology. In every country communism gains power, authoritarianism and death followed in its wake. As an investigative journalist, I want to understand why. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels set forth in the Communist Manifesto an ideology of struggle that, in their own words, abolishes all religion and all morality. It viewed the world from the lens of what Marx coined dialectical materialism, which was the absolute idea that development occurs as a result of struggle and life is nothing more than matter. If human existence is reduced to only matter, then life becomes expendable for the so-called greater good under communist doctrine. Except that the communist definition of good runs counter to what normal people understand as universal good. For example, I think most sane people would agree that famine, suffering, and genocide are bad. But to communist leaders, they've been reframed as successes or even as necessary for the so-called greater good. When Lenin assumed power in 1917, tens of thousands were arrested for opposing the regime, and many were tortured and executed en masse. Lenin's strategy was to eliminate, by legal or physical means, any challenge or resistance, even if passive, to their absolute power. By forbidding private property, peasants throughout Russia had their food, farming tools, and even seeds confiscated. Unable to farm, a man-made famine swept through Russia in 1921 and 1922, killing an estimated 5 to 10 million people. The very peasants that communism was supposed to benefit instead starved to death under its rule. According to the Black Book of Communism, Lenin was overjoyed, saying that famine would have numerous positive results. Since, he said, famine would destroy faith not only in the Tsar, but in God too. Following Lenin's death in 1924, Stalin's 29-year reign further bloodied Russia. More famines and purges would occur. In Ukraine, 7 to 10 million people were killed, according to the United Nations estimate published in November 2003. In Kazakhstan, an estimated 1.5 million people were starved. Like Lenin, Stalin also counted the famines as a success. He killed an estimated 60 to 66 million people, and the deaths under Mao Zedong of the Chinese Communist Party may have been even higher. Starting in 1958, the Great Leap Forward created yet another man-made famine that killed an estimated 45 million people within 4 years. Under both Stalin and Mao, historians have records of people who, desperate for survival, resorted to cannibalism. When conditions are that barbaric, people are forced to either die or to betray their own morals just to survive. And after violating their own morals, guilt, self-loathing, and all that makes a person psychologically vulnerable begin to dominate. To protect the psyche, people will sometimes tell themselves they made the right decision, that morality is relative, that everything is just matter, and that the communist worldview is correct. What the constant barrage of public executions, suffering, trauma, and madness does is leave people so afraid, shocked, or apathetic and numb that nobody can think straight anymore. A key goal of communism is to erase pre-existing morals. That way, communism can displace traditional morals with its own code of ethics, or rather, its absence of ethics. Their code demands only obedience to the party above basic humanity. The party dictates what is right and wrong, and anything that challenges it is deemed wrong. So under communism, morality, faith, and tradition are all targets for destruction. But under it, famine is right, struggle is right, and violence is right when they serve the party. Mao's Cultural Revolution in the 1960s saw children beating their own parents. Teachers, landlords, and intellectuals were hunted and publicly humiliated or worse by Mao's militant group, the Red Guard. Mao ended up killing between 50 million and 70 million people. Deaths elsewhere haven't been fully counted, but are placed at 1 million in Vietnam, 2 million in Cambodia, 1.7 million in Africa, 1.5 million in Afghanistan, 1 million in Eastern Europe, 150,000 in Latin America, and even more in other places where communism touched. Communism promises a world without suffering, and yet, in its execution, does the exact opposite. Is this a tragic case of the road to hell being paved by good intentions, or were the intentions bad from the get-go? Before he was the founder of communism, Karl Marx wrote many publications in his early years. In his early poem, Invocation of One in Despair, he wrote, "So a God has snatched from me my all. Nothing but revenge is left to me." This theme of revenge continues. In his 1839 play, Alanem, believed to be Emmanuel, an alternative name for God pronounced backwards.
Emmanuel. Emmanuel. Holy name. Holy name. Holy name.
The character in the play seeks to destroy not only himself, but the world along with him. In his 1841 poem, The Player, or The Fiddler, Marx writes, "Look now, my blood-dark sword shall stab unerringly within thy soul. God neither knows nor honors art. The hellish vapors rise and fill the brain, till I go mad and my heart is utterly changed." And he also writes, "See this sword? The Prince of Darkness sold it to me." And, quote, "With Satan I have struck my deal. He chalks the signs, beats the time for me. I play the death march, fast and free." Marx had a dark fixation with death, destruction, and revenge. And it's only fitting that his manifesto would create a system that achieved exactly these. Communism capitalized on humankind's desire for a higher purpose, and did so by destroying religion and placing itself at the helm instead. In an imagined communist state, the government controls everything, all matters public and private. People are all reduced to matter, cogs in a machine, and as employees or assets within a soulless collective. Communism is a belief built on the destruction of belief, and a morality built on the destruction of morality. It is a dead-end ideology built on struggle, hatred, and destruction.
The left is a destructive force in Western civilization, and it intends to destroy Western civilization. It is not coincidental. It is not a byproduct of leftism. It is the end game of leftism.
The devil's approach has been to subvert the culture given to mankind by God, corrupt human morality, and thus warp man and make him unworthy of salvation, severing this connection to corrupt man so that God would no longer take care of him.
They have literally an infinite supply of money, and with that money, they have bought everything and everyone who can be bought. So those of us who cannot be bought, because we operate on a level that goes way beyond the material, we are not rewarded for such behavior, we are punished for such behavior. And the most slovenly, disgustingly criminal, pedophile, corrupt moral individuals, those are the ones that are rewarded in this system, which is upside down. We reward the pedophiles, we reward the corrupt, we reward the liars, we reward the people with no morals at all.
Pablo, ¿comunismo o libertad?
Yo creo que
Ya te pones en tono de
es verdad de político. Comunismo.
Comunismo, ¿qué
¿Qué cojones?
Dostoevsky said straightforwardly, if there's no God, so if there's no higher value, let's say, if there's no transcendent value, then you can do whatever you want. And that's the question that he's investigating. And you see, this is why I have such frustration, say, with people like Sam Harris, the sort of radical atheists, because they seem to think that once human beings abandon their grounding in the transcendent, that the plausible way forward is with a kind of purist rationality. I don't understand that. I mean, it's as if the psychopathic tendency is irrational. There's nothing irrational about it. What the hell is irrational about me getting exactly what I want from every one of you whenever I want it at every possible second? Why is that irrational? Pure naked self-interest. How is that irrational? I don't understand that. I'm not arguing for the existence of God. I'm arguing that the ethic that drives our culture is predicated on the idea of God, and that you can't just take that idea away and expect the thing to remain intact mid-air without any foundational support.
Famed Russian author and Nobel Prize winner Alexander Solzhenitsyn wrote of the calamities that afflicted his people in the bloody wake of the Russian Revolution. At one point, he said, "Over half a century ago, while I was still a child, I recall hearing a number of old people offer the following explanation for the great disasters that had befallen Russia. Men have forgotten God, they said. That's why all this has happened. Since then, I have spent well nigh 50 years working on the history of our revolution. But if I were asked today to formulate as concisely as possible the main cause of the ruinous revolution that swallowed up some 60 million of our people, I could not put it more accurately than to repeat, men have forgotten God. That's why all this has happened."
Vladimir Lenin, under the Soviet Union, categorized all people into only two groups: those who supported the communist revolution and those who did not. And those who did not were marked for destruction. Traditional dialectics aim to help people understand truths through the exchange of varying ideas or by looking at both sides of an issue. Karl Marx's idea of dialectical materialism, which is at the heart of modern communism, does the opposite. It looks at various issues in society and identifies their polar opposites. It then takes those opposites as the communist viewpoints and pushes these viewpoints as absolute and unquestionable truths. Take something like the Taoist yin-yang symbol. In traditional culture, it is two opposite elements working together in harmony to form a whole. However, this was inversed under the Chinese Communist Party. In the selected works of Mao Zedong, the yin-yang, which is normally a whole, is split into two, with each side constantly fighting and struggling against the other.
During the Cultural Revolution, it's different. The Cultural Revolution, Mao was setting people against each other. So, like the teachers being killed, by who? By their students. And then later, the students start to kill each other because one side claimed to be more loyal to Mao. So Cultural Revolution is like mass movement and set up people against each other for reasons that is not clear to anyone. All was for one thing, for Mao to gain his absolute power. And it's happening here. This is, it's not a left and right thing. It is a good and evil. That is absolutely what we're dealing with, good and evil.
Struggle is quintessential to communism. And what that does is creates a pervasive negative worldview. By constantly using the concept of the greater good against the people, over time it conditions them to subconsciously reject good. And the concept of goodness doesn't exist. It's only a label used for power struggles. Since, after all, that's how the communists view the greater good. People become accustomed to an environment where people are selfish, evil, untrustworthy, and inherently have bad intentions. Everything is a struggle. This is the communist worldview. Oleg Penkovsky, the highest-ranking Soviet official to provide intelligence to the UK, said that if the same set of information were handed to generals in America, Britain, and the Soviet Union, that the American and the Englishman might possibly reach the same conclusion, but the Soviet general would arrive at conclusions which would be radically different from the other two. The logical process of his mind is totally unlike that of his Western counterparts, because he uses Marxist dialectics, whereas they will use some form of deductive reasoning. The thought process that communist systems instill in people is inverted.
Ahora, si me preguntas a mí personalmente, si tengo que ir a quemar un supermercado que me ha robado toda la vida para exigir lo que me ha correspondido por un derecho básico, yo lo hago.
Porque cuando todos tengamos y seamos más iguales, ¿verdad? El paso al socialismo, que es eso justamente, no se va a sentir siquiera.
Gender equality. Very good, Penelope.
Is this a joke?
You think gender equality is a joke?
No, but isn't this a maths class?
Don't be so racist.
I just asked a question.
We don't ask questions. Questions are offensive.
Yeah!
Now, students, I trust you've all completed your research assignments. And remember, the person with the highest mark will be flying to New York to present their paper at the World Mathematics Summit. Well done, Penelope. 6 out of 10. You too, Simon. 6 out of 10.
Hey, be careful. You've been staring at her for 10 seconds.
What?
It's a form of harassment to stare at a woman for more than 15 seconds straight. And when I use the term straight, I don't mean to offend any persons of a non-traditional sexual preference. And when I use the term non-traditional, I don't mean to offend any persons who oppose historically normalized...
Okay, I get it.
Unfortunately, Sunshine, your research assignment is only worth a 1 out of 10.
Fourier transform and mathematical methods in electronics to analyze the electrodiagrams of at-risk patients and calculate their risk of experiencing a heart attack. I mean, it's a new method, but it could potentially save thousands of lives.
7.
You barely even read it.
You used red pen.
What?
Red is considered offensive in many religions.
Why would you belittle everything down to a singular colour? Well, humanity is a rainbow of beauty and spirituality.
Yeah. Okay, fine, 7 out of 10, but that still means I get to go to the summit, right?
The marking process isn't over yet. Now, because we live in a society based on equality, the total amount of marks are to be divided equally among our students.
You've got to be kidding me.
Well done, students. We're all equal. We're all average.
Yay! But then who gets to go to the summit?
Oh, we haven't added our privilege points yet. Don't you know anything?
That is correct. Now, Penelope, you are female, so that's plus 1 privilege point. However, you are white, so that's minus 1.
I'm also bisexual.
Plus 1. That leaves you with a total score of 6 out of 10. Simon, unfortunately, you're straight, white, and male.
And cisgender.
Yes, so that's minus 4 privilege points, which leaves you with a total score of 1.
It's only fair.
Now you're male, and I don't like you. So that's minus 2 privilege points, but you are brown and sexually ambiguous. So that's plus 2. That leaves you with a total score of 5.
Wait, why am I sexually ambiguous?
And finally, Sunshine.
I'm gay, I'm trans, I'm Asian, I'm overweight, I'm lower class, I'm unintelligent, unattractive, I've got hairs on my nipples, and I also got body odor, and I can't really run properly or tie my shoelaces by myself. I once watched a pigeon die.
Wonderful, Sunshine. That's 13 privilege points. That leaves you with a total score of 18 out of 10. Well done, Sunshine. You're going to New York.
Hooray, Sunshine!
We knew you could do it!
Let me see this. They've just written equality and drawn love hearts on a piece of paper.
He expressed himself, and it's beautiful.
He didn't even spell equality correctly.
We don't discriminate.
This has nothing to do with mathematics.
You think you're so great with your maths and your science and your facts. What about feelings, huh?
Yeah. Feelings are more important than facts.
Yeah! This is wrong. You're all crazy.
Stop violating me with your different opinions.
I have the right to speak my mind.
No, we have the right not to be offended.
And that's more important. And if you don't stop verbally assaulting us, we will be forced to attack you in self-defense.
Can't do that.
Actually, we have every right to do so.
And it's illegal for you to fight back.
You cannot legislate equality. We make them equal by force. If we put the principle of equality in the basis of our socio-political structure, it's the same thing as building a house on sand. Sooner or later, it will collapse, and that's exactly what happens. The moment you bring a country to the point of almost total demoralization, when nothing works anymore, when you are not sure whether it is right or wrong, good and bad, where there's no division between evil and good, the normal, traditionally accepted relations are destabilized, cannot solve our problems anymore. The society at large becomes more and more antagonistic between individuals, between groups of individuals, and the society at large. No matter what, it's black against white, yellows against green, doesn't matter where the division line goes. As long as this group come into antagonistic clash, sometimes militantly, sometimes with firearms, that is destabilization.
On the surface, communism claims to empower people so they can be happy, but instead, it disempowers the people so they can be subjugated. One of the key changes that Marx and Engels made to the dialectical system of Hegel, a German philosopher, in order to form dialectical materialism, was to remove all spiritual elements. Communism aggressively seeks to destroy spirituality. The French Revolution trashed the cathedrals of France. The Cultural Revolution in China razed temples. Why do that? It's because spirituality itself poses a threat to communism. Even the very notion of a soul threatens communism, because the idea of a soul also carries an inner moral compass that's independent of government power. Inside your moral compass, if your true north points differently than where communism says north is, then that's a threat. Communism wants everyone to face the same uniform north, its north, which could very well be south. Marx held that struggle leads to social evolution, and he claimed that his ideas were the end stage. His communist system thus tried to incite struggle to hasten this process, a process that required fomenting economic, social, and moral collapse. Marx's theory of the 5 stages of civilization mirrors those of Thomas Cole's Course of Empires. Cole believed the 5 stages to be the savage world, the pastoral, the consummate empire, destruction, and desolation. Marx likewise envisioned 5 stages, with communism being the end goal. Marx called the consummate empire capitalism, the state of destruction, socialism, and desolation, communism. Communism arises only after all morals, traditions, beliefs, institutions, hierarchy, and values have been destroyed. Marx and his co-writer, Friedrich Engels, never intended socialism to be sustainable. Eventually, they believed, either the socialist dictatorship would collapse, or its leaders would somehow renounce their powers, leading to the envisioned stage of communism. This is why followers of communism argue that true communism has never been achieved. So the communist machine operates in a constant pursuit of an imagined future utopia by creating dystopia. In the last 100 years, it has claimed over 100 million to 150 million lives in its pursuit of progress. It has created societies where power is held by a small group that enslaves entire nations, and where killings, gulags, re-education through labor camps, censorship, and slavery become part of everyday life. Communism convinces people that it intends to bring people happiness, but this happiness can be achieved only after a segment of society is either suppressed or eradicated. It is a conditional happiness at the expense of a person's morals. In either the Eastern or Western spiritual view of the world, the course of human life serves to temper the character of the soul. Communism does not want you to have a soul. It wants you to follow orders. Collectively, as a society, we need to recognize and reject communism for its true nature, a machine that destroys the soul. If humanity as a whole embraces spirituality as a facet of life, then we can naturally progress and naturally find happiness, not an artificial, struggle-induced happiness that communism tries to sell us time and time again.
Now, the reason we've got John talking to us today is that he's got some words of advice which might shock the Christians, but this is for Christians from a communist.
If you want to lose your country, you don't lose your country through legal means. We're not going to lose this country through some sleight of hand legal means. We're not going to lose this country through some military takeover. We're not going to lose it through some political bastardry. We're going to lose our country through the loss of our values. And once we lose our values on who we are and what we value, right? Once we lose that, we're lost. We're lost. Things like that. Once you lose your values, once you lose your standards, you are lost. You don't know who you are, and you are easy pickings. And that's why the Christian faith and the Christians have to be dealt with. They've got to be knocked off, and they can't do it. These forces, these satanic and evil forces, these globalists around the world, that's what they're on about now, destroying the family values, destroying our sense of community, destroying our sense of nationality, destroying our identity, rewriting our history, teaching lies. All of these things are designed to make sure that we don't know who we are. And the one group that you can't do that to is a strong, loyal, faithful, educated Christian. You can't. You can throw whatever you like at them and you can't shake them. I've tried. I know that this war is a spiritual war. It's at the end of behind it all, it's a spiritual war and a psychological war. That's what we're fighting. And the ones who get it are the sharp Christians. When you get a lot of people coming together, when you get thousands and tens of thousands coming together, whether they're praying or meeting, if they're all together, the game's over. As soon as you do it, the game is over. They know you will send out a frequency, you'll send out an energy, you will send out an electricity that the whole country will feel. They will feel it. If they're all, part of the one cause, the connectivity amongst everyone produces this positive vibration, man. When you bring those forces together, those good forces, when people come together, by jingo, man, it's like electricity, and it's powerful stuff. Very powerful.